Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. The Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in my book, it's the bottom of page 9 where we're beginning. I'll just start reading here. Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. Jiva, the living entity. Prakriti, nature. Kala, eternal time. And karma, activity, are all explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Out of these 5, the Lord, the living entity, material nature, and time are eternal. The manifestation of Prakriti may be temporary, but it is not false. Some philosophers say that the manifestation of material nature is false, but according to the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, or according to the philosophy of the Vaishnavas, this is not so. So we mentioned 5 things, 4 of them are eternal, 1 of them is not. Which one is not? Anybody?
Karma.
What?
Karma?
Sound like you're not too sure yourself.
I am sure.
You're right. Okay. So out of these 5, the Lord, the living entity, material nature, and time are eternal. But karma ends, hopefully. So some philosophers say, okay. So the manifestation of the world is not accepted as false. It is accepted as real, but temporary. It is likened unto a cloud which moves across the sky, or the coming of the rainy season which nourishes grains. As soon as the rainy season is over, and as soon as the cloud goes away, all the crops which were nourished by the rain dry up. Similarly, this material manifestation takes place at a certain interval, stays for a while, and then disappears. Such are the workings of Prakriti, but this cycle is working eternally. Therefore, Prakriti is eternal. It is not false. The Lord refers to it as my Prakriti. This material nature is the separated energy of the Supreme Lord, and similarly, the living entities are also the energy of the Supreme Lord, although they are not separated, but eternally related. So the Lord, the living entity, material nature, and time are all interrelated and are all eternal. However, the other item, karma, is not eternal. The effects of karma may be very old indeed. We are suffering or enjoying the results of our activities from time immemorial, but we can change the results of our karma or our activity. And this change depends on the perfection of our knowledge. We are engaged in various activities. Undoubtedly, we do not know what sort of activities we should adopt to gain relief from the actions and reactions of all these activities. But this is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So there are activities, everyone's engaged in activities. One nice thing it says here, the effects of karma may be very, okay, after that. We are engaged in various activities. Undoubtedly, we do not know what sort of activities we should adopt to gain relief from the actions and reactions of all these activities. So every activity, for every action, there's a reaction. He who sows shall reap. So there is this karma. I mean, even the Bible where it says, "He who sows shall reap." So it says we're trying to see what activities we can do to get relief from all of this. Most people are not trying to see that. Most people aren't even thinking that far. This is just for the very small percentage of people who are thinking, what can I do so that I can get relief from this material miseries? And people, and out of many millions who think like this, only one knows Krishna and truth. So these topics, of course, are explained in the Bhagavad Gita. And we should at least think, anyone who's listening to this class, what do I have to do so that I no longer have to take repeated birth and death in this material world? Because repeated birth and death means birth, disease, old age, and death. It means suffering. Not that I just want to take birth in a better place, in a better situation. It's still the same suffering. We're in a prison house. It's just like in a prison, you have first class prisoners and third class prisoners. First class prisoner might be able to walk around the prison and give books to people or distribute something else to the different cells and have a little freedom around the prison, but he's still a prisoner. And the worst class prisoners in solitary confinement. He's in a little cell by himself for usually like 24 hours a day, maybe 24 and a half hours. 23 hours a day, or 23 and a half. He has a half an hour or an hour out of the cell to walk around or do something in the whole day. No people, no nothing, no contact. So that's the really bad case in the prison house. So similarly, in our prison house in this material world, some people are suffering greatly and others seem like it's relative to the people who are suffering like anything, they have a pretty good life, but they're also suffering like anything with birth, disease, old age, and death. Attachments cause suffering in this material world. You become attached and then you lose the person. You become attached and they don't want to have anything to do with you. You become attached and any little thing that happens to them affects you. So no matter what position you're in, you have so many problems in the spiritual world. And even if you become attached on the spiritual platform, then if they have to leave, if they have to depart, you can see it in relation to Krishna, that they're better situated. They're going back to the spiritual world, and for us, it's a loss for losing them, but it's still, if someone is spiritually advanced, we can appreciate even them leaving. Now they don't have to suffer so much with disease, old age. You might say, old age, what's wrong with old age? So you look a little older. It's not just the looks, it's the whole body doesn't work the way it used to be, and it's so many more pains and things. So old age is not good. Birth, you might think, is beautiful, but for the baby, it's not. The baby suffers a great deal in the womb and when it's born, just coming out of the womb. Then after that, then it becomes an illusion. Everybody looks down at it, kuchi 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 koo, and all that stuff, and that it's so nice for a little while for the baby. Because it's not so nice, because they wouldn't be crying all the time if it was so nice. They're crying and they can't even tell you what it is. I think they're hungry. Oh, they got gas. They got, the whole material world is a place of suffering. Abrahma bhuvanaloka punavartino junamamopete to kanteya punajanmana vidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all a place of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. So it's a miserable place. It's certified by Krishna as a miserable place. And you could become a first class prisoner, and it's a little less miserable than it is for the third class prisoner in this material world. But it's still, you wouldn't find rich, wealthy, people who have everything committing suicide if it was so wonderful, but they still, some of them commit suicide. Why? Because it's so many problems. Everybody has to go through so much distress. You have rich people who are anorexic. They don't eat, or they eat and they throw up so they can look better. And it's all these sick things people have to do, even wealthy people who have everything supposedly. So it's not a nice place, and it's certified as not a nice place. It's a prison house, and everyone here is a prisoner, and everyone here is suffering. And now we have a way to get out of this prison. And that's the thing that people should want to find out. How do I stop this karma? How do I get out of here and go to a better place? Well, I never have to come back again. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is all about. It's teaching us how we can live in such a way that we can be happy in this life and in the next. So the position of Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, is that of supreme consciousness. The jivas, or the living entities, being parts of and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also conscious. Both the living entity and material nature are explained as prakriti, the energy of the Supreme Lord. But one of the two, the jiva, is conscious. The other, prakriti, is not conscious. This is the difference. Therefore, the jiva, prakriti, is called superior because the jiva has consciousness which is similar to the Lord's. The Lord's is supreme consciousness, however, and one should not claim that the jiva, the living entity, is also supremely conscious. The living being cannot be supremely conscious at any stage of his perfection. And the theory that he can be so is a misleading theory. Conscious he may be, but he is not perfectly or supremely conscious. Prabhupada here is saying how you're not God. You might think you're God. A lot of people, I don't know how many people today, I don't meet that many anymore, but years ago there was a lot of people who thought they were God. And there probably are today, I just don't run into them. And I was told, like in India, you can find one incarnation of God pretty much in every village. So there are people who think this way. They're not God. They're not supremely conscious. I remember when I was in this illusion of being God, and I was talking to the devotee, and I was saying, he said, okay, if you're God, tell me what I'm thinking. And I thought, everything is God. So I said, you're thinking of God. And then he said, no, I'm thinking of dog. But that didn't really defeat me because I saw God, dog is also God. Everything is God. But there are things where the philosophy doesn't make any sense. Everything is one. We're all God. Because if we're all God, I'm the same as you. Then well, hopefully, like you may think you're God, and I tell you, well, give me all your money. There would be no reason if you're God and I'm God for you not to give me all your money because you still have it. You're God, But that's when it seems they don't usually keep that philosophy when people challenge him in that way. But it's just not a practical philosophy because it's not real. We're conscious of a limited amount. We're conscious that the most of this body, what's going on inside my body, outside my body, but I don't go further. I don't know. I'm not conscious of the guy in the store down the street. God's conscious of every living being. I'm not conscious of any of that. I'm not conscious of anybody I may be talking to who may have some pain in his stomach. I don't know about that. But God knows everybody's pain and pleasures at every moment. I mean, how am I God? So the jiva can never at any time be conscious of everything and everyone. And if we're conscious of others, it's only by the grace of Krishna, the grace of God, that we can know something about the person. We can see a little deeper into that person, only by Krishna's mercy. But we can't see everything everywhere. But Krishna can see everything everywhere. That's God. There's a difference between God and the jiva. It's like the ocean and a drop. And the drop has the same quality as the ocean. If you analyze the drop, you see there's salt, and you can see there's salt in the ocean. You can find out many facts about the ocean by just examining the drop. So similarly, you can find out many things about God by examining the jiva. But there's a big difference between the drop and the ocean. You know, you get a drop of the ocean water on your head, you don't mind. But if tsunami comes, that's pretty bad. You know, you most likely, if it comes over you, you're not surviving that. So we have to see there is a vast difference between God and the jiva. The jiva is infinitesimal, like a spark from the fire. And that spark can be covered, but the fire is never covered. God is never covered. I mean, a fire might get covered and die out, but that would be the jiva. But God, he has all the potencies and he's always existing. There's nothing else but him. In one sense, he's not, everything is just an expansion from him. But the jiva is a special expansion that it's conscious, but it's not the same consciousness as God. So the distinction between the jiva and the Ishvara will be explained in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is kshatragya, conscious, as is the living being. But the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all bodies. Because he lives in the heart of every living being, he is conscious of the psychic movements of the particular jivas. We should not forget this. It is also explained that the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is living in everyone's heart as Ishvara, as the controller, and that he is giving directions for the living entity to act as he desires, as he, with a small h, as the living entity desires. So he's given us directions to act as we desire. For instance, he's also he's telling us the right thing, but if we want the wrong thing, then he'll tell us that. For instance, he's telling us don't steal, but if we really want to steal, then he'll show us, hey, look at that, there's a purse sitting over there, why don't you take it? He'll tell us that too. He's giving directions for the living entity to act as the living entity desires. Living entity forgets what to do. First of all, he makes a determination to act in a certain way, and then he is entangled in the actions and reactions of his own karma. So, you know, let your, what is it, word? Let your conscience be your guide. Your conscience is super soul. He's telling us. There's several problems with that. Is in the impure state is you don't know for sure what super soul is telling us. Sometimes we may know, but a lot of times we're not sure. And we just have to try to become pure so we do know. But if we let our conscience be our guide, then we'll be following super soul and going back home, back to Godhead. So after giving up one type of body, he enters another type of body as we put on and take off clothes. As the soul thus migrates, he suffers the actions and reactions of his past activities. So as we go through different bodies, we're getting different karma. We have to get some reactions. So these activities can be changed when the living being is in the mode of goodness, insanity, not insane, and understands what sort of activities he should adopt. So first we have to learn what we're supposed to do. First, even before the first, we have to have a desire to learn the truth. We want the truth. We don't want to suffer. We see this material life. Somehow we listen to Super Soul and we got some realizations that we should be looking for the truth. So then when we look for the truth, we become more situated in the mode of goodness. And then we can understand more about these things. And then we understand what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And of course, ultimately, when we get a bona fide spiritual master, he can instruct us as to what we should do and what we shouldn't do. but even just being sincerely searching, Krishna within can give us so many realizations. So if he does so, then all the actions and reactions of his past activities can be changed. So we have karma from the past. So I have to suffer that karma. But if you surrender to Krishna, you make that conscious effort, Krishna can wipe out that karma, or can minimize that karma. Instead of getting, run over by a big, huge truck, you may get a pinprick, or you might trip in the house and hurt your toe. You get some minimal karma for this, as a token to get rid of all that karma. So if he does so, then all the actions and reactions of his past activities can be changed. Consequently, karma is not eternal. Therefore, we stated that of the 5 items, Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, time, and karma, 4 are eternal, whereas karma is not eternal. So these are some basic things we have to learn. We should know, and we will learn them more as we go on reading Bhagavad Gita. These are important things. Now, I'm just going to kind of stop for questions, if anyone has any questions at this time before I read more. Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Pyari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Shuddha Bhakti. I imagine that's you, right?
Yes, Dandavat Pranam, all Krishna Prabhu. Regarding karma, as you said that, there is a karma and Krishna can, minimize it. But still, we have to go through our karma. So why should we think to minimize our karma? Because ultimately we have to go through it. And then if Krishna desires, it's up to him to take away that consequences of our previous karma. But we should not be praying to remove that, right, Pyari Prabhu? What should be the mood for, because we are suffering?
I think the mood should be wanting to surrender to Krishna, wanting to please Krishna, not thinking at all about how we're going to get rid of our karma. That just happens automatically by having the desire to please Krishna. Just by doing, and to please Krishna means you know what to do. Your guru explains to you what you should do, and you start doing those things, sincerely, wholeheartedly, and then I don't know devotees who are thinking about getting rid of their past karma. You don't even think about it. It just happens. Krishna takes care of that. I don't think you got to pray to Krishna, please get rid of my past karma. I don't even know what my past karma is. I know in this life what my karma is. If I knew what everything was, I might be scared, but I'm not too afraid because I don't know what I did in past lives. And even if we did know, it's like we might be ashamed of it, and we might feel bad about it. But the only way to get rid of it is by surrendering to Krishna. It's like if you fall down, if you're engaged in Krishna consciousness, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but you fall down from it, which many devotees have. So what do? Now you come back to Krishna consciousness. So now, what should I do? Prayaschitya means reformatory acts, like you do something wrong, so you want to make up for it. Like if I commit an offense against somebody, I feel bad, and I want to do something to counteract it. And that's should be normal and should be what we'd feel like. And we should do something if at all possible. But with Krishna, we did some things wrong. So now what do I have to do to make up for it? I fell down, I've been gone for a year, I haven't done anything Krishna conscious, and now I'm coming back. What do I do to make up for it? It said there is no prayaschitya, there is no reformatory act. All you do is again engage in that service. You start where you left off. That's all you do. And you start if you're chanting 16 rounds, you're doing whatever you're doing, whatever service you do. And then you just start again from the beginning. Not from the beginning, but from where you left off. And there's no other activities. You don't have to, like in Catholic Church, you have to say so many Hail Marys and so many Our Fathers. These are prayers you have to say. If you go to confession, you did some sins. And you say those prayers and you feel good, you're forgiven from the sins. And then you just usually go back doing the same things you were doing after some time. But in Krishna consciousness, all you do is engage. It's the highest service you can do. Is just a simple service of performing these activities in Krishna consciousness. There's no other atonement that one has to perform. So if you just engaging in Krishna consciousness, that's the best thing you can do to get free from your past karma. But I don't think I've ever thought about how to get free of my past karma. I just don't even think about it. You just engage in serving Krishna. So if you're thinking about it, then you have to serve Krishna more, and that's all you can do.
And no, I'm not thinking to get rid of my karma. I want to go through it, because suffering is like, you're nullifying all the reactions of previous karmas, so that you can start.
Okay, why do you have to suffer to nullify it? What if Krishna wants to take it away and you say, no, I want to keep it?
No, we won't say anything to Krishna, but it's up to Krishna to give
It's up to
suffering or not.
Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, it's up to Krishna.
Yeah.
I can see I'm suffering because of sinful activities I've done. And I'm not asking Krishna to stop that suffering, whatever he does. But if he wants to stop my karma, I'm not going to argue with him that, no, I want to suffer. Why would I want to suffer? I'm suffering enough without having, and without, if he is relieving me of my karma, it's like everyone is still suffering. We're getting enough even with the relief. I'm not sure your question. You think only by suffering do you get rid of your karma? Even that, I got into a whole thing once about karma. Now, karma is something bad happens to you, right? So like, let's just say you break a leg. Now, and that's your karma. You have a choice of how to react to that. Now you might lament and suffer and the pain and so many things about that. Or you just say, don't let it bother you. So you don't have to really suffer when you get some bad karma. You have a choice of how to react to that karma. And if you don't suffer for that karma, you still get rid of the karma. You already got it. You broke your leg and that's it. That's your karma. Now you have the choice of how to react to it. You can react to it blissfully. Now I can stand in front of a store with my broken leg and with a can and see if I get donations for the temple. You can use it in Krishna service. And that's just one example, is a broken leg. But whatever happens to us, we can see, okay, I'm burning off my karma. Now I don't have to suffer in order to burn it off. It's already burnt off. I got the reaction. Now I'm not going to, something happens to my family member. I mean, we have affections, they're natural objects of affection, family members, but at the same time, I don't have to be so attached that they're going through some problems and I have to suffer so much. And it don't have to be callous. You do everything you can to help, but not be so attached where you're suffering so much. So you have a choice of how to deal with that karma, because that's your karma too. It's your child's karma, your husband's karma, your wife's karma. They're going through some karma, and it's your karma too, what you're going through. So you have a way to deal with it. And you do your best to help, but at the same time, you have to be detached, be attached to Krishna. So I don't understand why why you're thinking you have to suffer in order to get rid of your karma.
I mean, what I think is that a devotee never asks for relief, from those sufferings, but he
Right.
just engages himself or herself in devotional service without expecting anything, because that will be like a business otherwise. You know, if I'm doing this, you do this for me. I mean, like a devotee never asks for any favor to
Right,
Krishna, but he
right,
just does the service. He just engages, no
right.
matter what he goes through, whether he is suffering materially or any in any
Right,
sense. But
right.
that's what. So why to ask for a minimizing suffering, but just let it go, and we just engage in service.
Where did anyone say you should ask for minimizing suffering? Where did it say that? I didn't read it and I didn't say it. Where did you get
No,
that?
no. No. My question was, like usually, like we see some people suffering, and they say, "Why Krishna me? Why should I suffer like that?" So, but I'm saying a devotee never asks for that relief. That's what my understanding was.
A devotee doesn't ask for that relief. Yes, that's true. But
Yes.
if it comes, you don't say, no, I don't want it. It's Krishna, whatever Krishna wants. If he's minimizing your karma, why should you not accept it?
Yes.
You know,
Thank you, Pyari Prabhu.
this is just telling us a fact how things are working. Krishna minimizes or takes away your karma from when you surrender to him. So that's not the reason we're surrendering to him. I don't think so. But at the same time, that's one of the things that happens. So we accept it.
So it's like a byproduct.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
A
Thank you,
positive-
Pyari Prabhu.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Pyari Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, you said that karma is not eternal. Can you explain why karma is not eternal?
Because you can get free from karma by the karma you have. If you surrender to Krishna, you get rid of all your karma. So it ends.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
But it doesn't seem like sometimes, doesn't it? I was going to joke, like when you said, like, oh, you don't sound so sure. Maybe I don't sound so sure because my karma seems to be eternal.
No, but yeah, but you'd rather if it went away. Everyone, we're all, millions of lifetimes we performed activities, and there's karma for every single one of those activities, both good and bad. Not just bad, but there's also good karma. Now, how do you get free from those? You have millions of lives to get rid of this karma, and you can't get rid of it because you're still acting. So it never ends in that sense. But the only way it can end is by surrendering to Krishna. Then he's in charge of karma, he's in charge of everything. So he minimizes it, he gets it all. So you may be getting millions of lifetimes worth of karma in this one lifetime, and that's why it may seem pretty bad. But it's just getting rid of so many lifetimes of karma. So the devotee is supposed to just accept this and take whatever challenges, whatever difficulties he has, and still engage in serving Krishna. And then it says it becomes his rightful, what's the word? Like when you're like rightful inheritance, that you go back home, back to Godhead. But when you complain about the situation, then that, not accepting it, whatever it is, then you may not be ready to go back to Godhead. I mean, we can complain, if there's anything someone could do to help, what should I do to help? So we can talk to people like about that. But if we're just thinking it's, why am I suffering so much? We shouldn't think, we should actually be thinking, I deserve to suffer much more than I am suffering. This is just a minimum of what I deserve. I deserve much worse. That's the way devotees should think, and that's the way most devotees do think. And the materialists, they think, why me? Why do I have to suffer? I didn't do anything wrong. It's like Duryodhana. He thought that he went out to see who was a greater person than him. And he came back finding that he couldn't find one person in the whole city that's greater than him. And Yudhisthira Maharaj went out and tried to find somebody lower than him. And he came back and he couldn't find anybody lower than him. So the devotees think differently than the non-devotees. So as far as our karma goes, we really should think I deserve much worse. Even in this lifetime, for what I did, I deserve worse, let alone what I may have done or what I did do in past lifetimes. You know, we should see how bad we are in this lifetime, let alone other lifetimes. I remember when I first became a devotee, I thought I was so pure. I remember this is something that has happened to many devotees, which I never knew until after Prabhupada left, and so many devotees have said this experience they had, and I had also, is when I first saw Srila Prabhupada, not when I first saw him, I was looking right at him, and then he looked into my eyes, and he looked there just for a split second. And at this time, I thought I'm like a fully surrendered soul and pure. But when he looked at me, I saw, I mean, this is my realization. I saw what he saw, and I saw that I was like completely black. My heart was so contaminated. And he looked at me only for a split second, and I thought that he couldn't have looked at me any longer because I wouldn't have been able to take it. That's why he just turned and looked at someone else after that. But he looked right into my eyes for that split second, and I saw how contaminated I was, how filthy I was, how black. I remember black. My whole heart was black. And I at that time, I was a relatively new devotee. But at that time, I thought, before that, I thought I was such a good person and so pure. And, and then I saw that. After that, I had also other times he looked into my eyes, I looked into his eyes, but that never happened again. Only the very first time that I saw him did that happen. And it was a great realization of how contaminated I was. So you might think you're clean and pure, and you may not be. But for the devotee, he should be thinking that whatever karma he's getting is actually, he deserves worse. Okay, any other questions? Any comments?
So you were saying that no matter whether you're in a first class prisoner or a third class prisoner, you still have to go through birth, death, old age, and disease, which are common to no matter what position you're born in this world. Someone was giving a class and I was like laughing when he said, just because you're born to a rich mother doesn't mean you have extra cushion in that womb. And I could really relate to that, because no matter you're born into the richest mother or the poorest mother, you don't get any extra cushion in that womb.
Jayadvita Maharaj says that, Mataji.
Is that right? Oh, I think you
Jayadvita,
mentioned that.
yes, I mentioned in the class.
And I was like laughing my head off when you said that, because Jayadvita Maharaj says these kind of things.
Anyway, I never heard that, but I like it, and it's funny, and it's true.
just like when he said, when you go to Goloka Vrindavan, it's not Chintamani Hotel, it's Chintamani Dham.
Yeah. Okay, let me read one more paragraph and then we'll see if there's any more questions and answers. The supreme conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. So we have transcendental consciousness. Unfortunately, ours is coming through this ego of ours, and it's false ego, and it becomes contaminated by the modes of nature. So it is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter, I mean, this is what scientists are saying. You mix a few chemicals together and you get consciousness. And there was actually a devotee, he passed away not very long ago, Prabhupada disciple, Hamsadutta. Hamsadutta, I don't think even graduated high school, but he was in India, and there was this big scientist who was saying how there's a combination of like, I'm just going to guess, I think it was like 11 amino acids. And if you mix these 11 amino acids, that's where life comes from. So then he wrote back in the newspaper. This was in like the newspaper. So Hansarupa wrote back, said, I will challenge you. I will give you these 11 amino acids, and I want to see you create life. You know, we can, and I'll give you. He also offered like thousands of, you know, like a lakh of rupees or something. He offered a lot of money if he can do this. And then it became a big thing in the newspaper, like, and like all of India was, I believe it was all of India was doing this, and they were writing back and forth. And of course, the guy never did it because he can't make life. And Prabhupada wrote that book, Life Comes from Life. But by Hamsadutta doing this, Prabhupada was very pleased. He liked it very much that he challenged this scientist, and the scientist wouldn't accept his challenge. Okay, so, and Prabhupada wrote the book, Life Comes from Life. You know, life doesn't come from dead matter. So it is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color. But the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. Lord Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. So when he comes here, he still has the same spiritual consciousness. He's still God. He's not affected. Even that's another thing when people claim to be God. God is always God. God doesn't forget he was God, and now he's got to go on this whole path of suffering to try to figure out that he's God. It's just such a stupid idea that we're all God. But when you're thinking a certain way, it may sound good, but there's so many things that don't make any sense to it. It's like, what is God? What is the definition of God? I mean, if you have a definition of God as it's a human being, then yeah, we're all God. Well, but you know, the definition of God is the absolute truth. You're all knowing. All knowing is one definition, but you're not all knowing. You can't even get 100% on all your exams. Well, and those are just material things that anybody can do. So let me go back a little bit. Lord Krishna says, Mayadakshena Prakriti, when he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he were so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters as he does in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from materially contaminated consciousness. Okay, just for our practical selves, we may not be free from all contaminated consciousness, and we can speak about the transcendental world if we're repeating what Krishna is saying about the transcendental world, or if we're repeating what the pure devotee is saying about the transcendental world. Then it's not contaminated. If it's just like the mailman may be messed up in so many different ways, but if he delivers your letter to your mailbox, you get the mail unadulterated. He doesn't add anything to the letter. He doesn't take anything away. He just gives you the letter. So we can also become representatives like mailmen given the same transcendental knowledge, even though we may not be completely on the transcendental platform. But if we're repeating what we hear from the perfect authorities, then that knowledge we're giving is perfect. He would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters as he does in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from material contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. And of course, Srila Prabhupada is given the process to purify the materially contaminated consciousness. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, and that will make us happy. Dovetailed to the will of Ishvara. So we have some ability, and you dovetail that ability for Krishna. Use it in Krishna's service. And that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. Just like we're selling books. So selling books, and the people who are selling encyclopedias or people who are selling any other books, they're selling books. So these are same activities, but the differences of what books we're selling, why we're selling the books, what we're doing with the money when we get the money from selling the books. So that's activities in bhakti. They appear to be like ordinary activities. He's just selling books, but they are not contaminated. One makes spiritual advancement by engaging in those activities. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man. But such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental. Even the devotee are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. You may even, in the neophyte state, or even in a little more advanced state, your consciousness may not be so good. It may be contaminated by different things. But if you're doing the right activity, if you're making that effort, if you're trying to distribute the books, and you may be thinking of so many things, but you're trying your best, those activities are purifying. Example, I remember hearing when I was a new devotee, that a devotee in New York, Prabhupada sent him, I'm going to tell you the way I heard it or the way I remember it. He sent him to the store for an eggplant, and he came back and he told Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, I was in Maya. I went out, I was thinking of this and that, thinking of so many things, and I was just in Maya. And Prabhupada said, did you get the eggplant? And he said, yes. And he said, very good. So it gives us an example, like we're not going to immediately have pure Krishna consciousness. Our consciousness may not be so good, but we make ourselves do the right thing. Just like a doctor gives some prescription. I want you to take rest. I want you to take this medicine. I want you to eat these foods. So you do it. You do it. And you may want to eat some other things, but you don't eat the other things. You may not want to take the medicine, but you make yourself take it and you get well. Same thing with Krishna consciousness. We have certain activities we do. You make yourself do those activities, whether you feel like it or not. And you make yourselves not do the activities you shouldn't do. You don't do it. You just take shelter of Krishna. And even though we're thinking differently, we're on the right path. We're making ourselves do it, and we're getting purified, and we're on the transcendental platform. So in pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, and that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man. But such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point, our consciousness is contaminated. Okay, before I go any further, I don't have much time. We got 8 minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions on anything I said today or read? Well, I can read one more paragraph, unless somebody has some. Okay, we are materially contaminated. We are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. So this false ego identifying with this body or identifying with something we're not. Real ego means identifying with who we are, that we're a spirit soul, and identifying with that. That's our real ego. I remember one time, a devotee was telling Srila Prabhupada that he's so selfish. He feels so bad, I'm so selfish. And Prabhupada said, it's okay to be selfish if you know who your real self is. So if you know you're a spirit soul, an eternal servant of Krishna, and you want to do what's best for you, that's okay. Best for you, the soul. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily concept of life. And Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. So Arjuna was not in the bodily concept of life. He was put into illusion just so Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. So one must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. That's the preliminary one. And we're all still having that problem of getting free from the bodily concept of life. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also, the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitva yata rupam swarupena vyavastiti. Yeah. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation, and from this material world and situation in pure consciousness. Okay, let me read that again. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. I think it should be unsituated, but anyway, all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness. And therefore, we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. That's a really nice answer to what is purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means always thinking of Krishna, whatever. Here it says purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. So we have certain instructions. If we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then we're in purified consciousness. We're chanting our rounds, we're reading, we're not doing, we're not breaking any of the 4 regulated principles. We're following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada in what we should do. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. All the instructions of the pure devotee are the same thing, because he's telling us what the Lord is telling us. The pure devotee is the Chaitya Guru, the Guru with it. Chaitya Guru is internal Guru, and the spiritual master is the representative of Chaitya Guru. So the spiritual master, he is saying what Krishna is saying in our heart. So we follow those instructions, we make ourselves do it, we act accordingly, then that's purified consciousness. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. Yes, we can get affected by the inferior modes of passion and ignorance. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. It's like the spark can die out, but the fire continues. So the little sparks can get covered, but the Supreme Lord, he's never covered. He's never affected by the modes of nature, prakriti. These are just his creations. He's not affected by it. We're kind of caught up in it, and it's not always so easy to get out of it. But we should have faith that if we just follow the instructions of the Guru and Krishna, then we will eventually get to the transcendental platform, even in this life, even in this body. So, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we're going to end like 2 minutes or 1 minute early.
At the beginning of class, you said, Pyari Prabhu, we all have to think of how to get out of this material world, that this is a horrible place. So how do you get out of the material world? What is like a sure formula to get out?
Yeah, in the beginning, I was saying that, first of all, most people aren't even asking that question, but the more intelligent people or people who are more sincere, or for some reason they just had it with material nature, and they may think about how to get out. So that's just the beginning. Once we do, then Krishna will send us a representative. Krishna will even tell us things in our heart. If we're sincere, we'll hear them. Just like I, before knowing anything about Krishna consciousness, I was trying to follow God, even though I thought I was God. I didn't even know what. When I looked at what I wrote, after I became a devotee, it really didn't make much sense, because I remember praying to God, and then I was thinking, why am I praying to God if I thought I was God? But I was. So, but I remember thinking that God wanted me to stop eating meat. Now, how did I come to that conclusion? I was really sincerely searching. I was mixed up, but I was sincerely searching. So I became a vegetarian before I knew anything about Krishna, before I met devotees. And that's the reason I became a vegetarian, not for health reasons or for anything else. It was because I thought that God, that's what he was telling me to do. So you can, and then eventually, if you're sincere, and Krishna will send you a bona fide representative. And then you just hear what those instructions are, and then you apply them to your life the best you can. And then you try to keep improving on them. And you shouldn't get so depressed because you can't do everything, because everything is going to be too much. But at least do a little more each time. Try to do a little bit better. So by Krishna's mercy, we know what we're supposed to do, and all we have to do is now apply it to our lives, make ourselves do it. I don't know if that answers your question, because I'm not positive I remember what you even asked.
Yeah, more or less. But if there is a fast track, if there's a fast formula.
Yes, like Maharaj Katwanga. Maharaj Katwanga, he fought for the demigods. He was a king, an earthly king, but he fought really well, and he fought for the demigods, and he did real good. And they asked him, well, we would like to give you some benediction. What would you like? And his family was all gone. They already died, thousands of years ago, because he was in the heavenly planets, and he was still young. I mean, maybe not young, but he was still alive, because the time is different in the heavenly planets than it is in the earthly planet. So they asked him, what do you want? He said, well, I'd like to know when I'm going to die. And they said, you're going to die in one moment. And at that moment, he completely took shelter of Krishna and went back home, back to Godhead. So we have to take shelter of Krishna. We don't know when we're going to die. So we, like Maharaj Pariksit knew he had 7 days and then he was going to die. So he had 7 days to hear the Bhagavatam. We don't know if we have even 7 minutes, 7 seconds. We don't know how long we have, or 7 years, or 70 years for little people, young people. But we can at any moment just surrender to Krishna. So what we have to practice doing is surrender to Krishna at every moment that we become conscious of it. Like now I'm thinking about it. I want to surrender to you. Let me think of you. Let me think of your lotus feet. Let me engage in your service. Let me chant your holy names. Let me do this for you. And whenever we think about it, we should be engaging in that way. Take shelter of Krishna. There's 9 processes of devotional service, and you could take shelter of any one of those 9 processes at any time. So most of the time we forget about it, but when we remember it, we have to take shelter. It's just like when we forget it, when we chant japa, we forget we're chanting japa and it becomes mechanical. We have to bring our mind back to hearing again the japa. So that's what you have to do. You have to surrender to Krishna and any one of the 9 processes. Whenever you remember that you're not, unfortunately, we don't remember that we're not so often, but when we do, we should chant Hare Krishna, at least. I try to do that when I remember I'm doing something that doesn't take any thinking. You know, if you're doing the laundry or something, you don't really got to think about it. So chant Hare Krishna while you do the laundry or whatever you're doing. I used to have my bird inside. In the winter, I put him inside. And I chant to him in the winter when I go down and do the laundry. And he chants back. He does. So, I don't know, any other questions?
So Devi Priya Mataji, as per Prabhupada, fast track is just 1 minute.
What?
As per Srila Prabhupada, we can get Krishna consciousness in just 1 minute. If you remember that video, Srila Pyari Prabhuji on YouTube, where Srila Prabhupada said it's just 1 minute.
Well, he also said you can do it in just 1 moment.
Oh, okay. That is faster than a minute.
I like that better.
That's almost like I was distributing books outside of a store, and the manager came out. He was really angry. He said, I want you out of here. I want you out of here in 10 minutes. You better be gone. So I kept distributing, and he came out really angry. He said, I told you to leave. I said, you told me I could distribute for 10 more minutes. I don't know if you get that, but he didn't like it. So then I had to leave because he told me, I want you out of here. Get out of here. You better be gone. In 10 minutes, you better be gone. So I stayed for 10 minutes more, or at least until he came back out.
You took him at his word.
That's not what he was saying. That's what he said, but it's not what he meant. No, you say what you mean. He got more upset when I pointed it out to him. He said I could stay for 10 more minutes.
The smart aleck.
Yeah, I know, but I was just doing it for Krishna. I figured I could interpret it literally, and that's what I did. Okay, so let's offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Panchakalpatarubhyascha
Sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Tulsi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Chaitanya.
No, that's Malati Priya.
Hare Krishna.
I was wondering, who is that kid?
Oh, I'm jealous of Tulsi. Sorry.
Haribol, glory to